Good morning. I am David for BigBits, and we are pumping on Bitcoin this morning. Start to the day, always nice to see price going up. Market just opened, I believe, just a second ago. So we are going to see some things going on today. I want to start off the stream with some TA, capture your attention on some pretty important things that have been going on. This is just a 1 minute chart. I don't get caught up in these, but this is a solid reaction to that dip there. We're going to start at the 1 minute, and we're going to start zooming out just a little bit so that we can see just why these little pumps are starting to be important, especially when you're kind of breaking those kind of range highs back here on those. So this is the 1 minute. Let's take a look at our 5 minute chart. Where are we at? We kind of had that test pump take down, kind of coming out of that range again here. See how things do. Things are looking up. 15-minute chart, kind of telling a similar story. I'm not sure we're going to pump straight out of this range very quickly, but things definitely have been looking very positive. Lots of strong signals on your 15-minute chart here. Nice wicks on the bottom of these candles showing some pretty strong buying going on. It's nice. Go out to the 1 hour chart. Somewhat similar. Looks like we're getting a little bit of respect for the 100 moving average on the 1 hour chart. Now, this likely could have been the 100 EMA that a lot of people trade. Let's take a look at that. So if you don't use my indicators that I created several years ago, what you're going to want to do is add these to your chart. This is only 2 indicators that you're seeing on the chart. So the first one is the triple moving averages, fancy triple moving averages by BigBits.io. You'll get the green line, the yellow line, and the red line with the forecast dots telling you where we expect them to be in the next 5 candles. And then you'll also get the fancy Bollinger Bands. So, excuse me. What we're going to do right now is we're going to change this 100 SMA to an EMA and see if that's what's actually kind of going on here. So MA2, which is our yellow, let's change this to an EMA. See how that impacts it. So not quite, but kind of. You can kind of see the EMA, of course, exponentially weighted. So current price action kind of takes a little bit higher weight on that. Go back to the SMA. They're very similar. Usually not terribly far off. So a lot of people trade either the EMA or the SMA. A lot of times you'll find one tends to be respected while the other doesn't. But when you get those confluences like we were talking about, those seem to be pretty important. All right. So taking a look here at the hourly. One thing I like to see here is on my stochastic weights advanced indicator, which I believe is available for free publicly. If not, I need to make it that way. It crossed under here, but price is going up. So if we get a momentum change up here, that's usually pretty bullish. You can see something kind of like that back here on the chart. We have price moving up, consolidating and moving up, and then it crossed back up and it had a nice little pump there. Kind of what I'm looking at here. Price is continuing to go up. Like I told you, that's kind of what we were looking at as soon as we opened the chart. Things were looking really good this morning for a really good day. You're back on the 1 minute chart. Told you solid buying on those 1 minute and 15-minute candles where we saw the wicks at, right? Let's go out to the 4 hour now. Where are we at on a 4 hour chart? I like what I see. Very much, very bullish. The only thing I don't care for is the upper band kind of squeezing down. I could see that kind of limiting our room for growth today, potentially with the 4 hour chart. But what I do like to see is that 100 4-hour was also respected here very well. It kind of got front ran, which is very nice. And then, like again, that upper band coming down is a little concerning, but I'm not too worried about it. We could easily bump and run on those upper bands, so it's not a big deal. what I really like to see is our 4-hour. Look how low we got on the stochastic weights advanced. This is so low. Usually these are very good dip buying opportunities, especially in a bull market. Let's go back, look at these record lows in recent terms. There's usually a short-term bounce. Let's see if we can find this in a more bullish period. Right here, you know, and that had been going down several in a row without a huge dip. That wasn't terrible. When we get into the green here, it starts looking like a good dip buying opportunity. I love this indicator. I love looking for very low values on it and then zooming into the chart to find better values in which to buy it. Like I said, I look at the daily, weekly, and 4-hour charts to identify where the trend probably is going for the day. And then I look at your 15-minute chart to see a shorter term trend. Where are we within that 4-hour or the 1-hour as well? Really zooming in and out of charts to try to find where you should be buying. If you're trying to time the trend, you could have, you know, look, you see the dip here, it got to its lowest value here and kind of stalled out. You could have bought here, but if you're trying to time the buy right at the low, you could have very well done that if you zoomed in. Let's take a look at the 1-hour and I'll show you exactly what I mean. We did this, I think, last week as well. But this is that same thing on the 1-hour. You got a very low value here, but if you would have waited for the bullish divergence to form here, you would have got a better entry. So that's what I like to see on a 1-hour. We see low values on a 4-hour chart. We zoom in to try and find a good entry on a 1-hour chart. So now we're here. And I think I did this last week, so I'm not going to go on about this much more, but just continue to zoom in on your chart and you'll continue to find where the opportunities are. But start further out. Don't start on a 1-minute chart and zoom out. Start on a daily or a weekly. See where you're at. And if you haven't traded in a while, look at the monthly. It's important to understand the big picture of where things currently are before you start looking at these charts. All right, so let's get back to that 4-hour. Like we're getting batted back down a little bit as we approach that upper band right now. That's completely fine. Look at the 1-day chart. Right here, there's a couple of conflicting signals. When values are fairly neutral for this indicator, I tend to ignore them. Like I said, I like to look for very high and very low values and then divergences on this one. Otherwise, it's a lot of noise in the middle. It can move quickly because it weights stochastic values up and down quite a bit. What I do like to see, though, is this trend change in our RSI. This is a smoothed RSI. I'm pretty sure it uses a standard RSI with a whole moving average, I believe. And anyway, this orange line is your smoothed RSI, and it started trending upward. And we had a nice change here from going below that trend line to above it with the RSI. And you'll notice when a trend change occurs, sometimes those can extend upward for quite some time. Other times, not so much. So this is a good sign. It doesn't mean anything's going to happen, but it's something I look for and I like. You'll notice it happened here. Not a terrible time to have purchased, but its first crossover was here on this candle. Things looked pretty good, and they were. I like it. Again, this one's more noise here. What I see happening on the daily, we broke out of the mid band. We have a retest on the mid band. If we close green, even at this level today, I think we're very bullish on the daily chart for a while. We didn't even test the 50-period moving average yet. But if you can test this mid band after breaking it and reclaim it, I think very likely we're heading up to the upper band for another bump and run. Who knows? But that's what I see. I've been talking about this for a few days now. I thought we were going to have a touch and go on the bottom. Even Mr. Bands himself, Peter Bollinger. No, wait. Is his first name Peter? I'm thinking of Peter Schiff. But Mr. Bollinger himself, I think, mentioned the possibility of the touch and go on the bottom bands. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now on the TA, is this touch on the bottom and the go. But we're getting a nice retest. This is very clean, honestly. The TA on this chart is just amazing. We touch near the bottom bands. We actually do touch it the next day, but then you get a bullish engulfing candle taking you right back to the mid band. You retest that as resistance, spend 2 days going down, and you don't even take out the lows of either of those previous candles. And then you immediately start reclaiming price. You break above the mid band, have some tests here, but if we can close a solid green candle today, this chart's going to look so clean. It looks so good, so bullish. I don't know what to think. Like, everything's looking really good here on the daily chart. If we can finish with a nice green candle today, and that's something to look for. If you break down and you close down below the mid band here, you're going to test the 50, and we'll probably form a sideways range of some sort. Something like this, you know. You'll form a kind of sideways range, and I'm not even pointing at really diagonal lines there. I'm just horrible at drawing lines like that. But some sort of sideways range or slightly descending range as we test some more. But again, I'm very hopeful we close the daily green, and then we head up back towards the upper bands for another bump and run. Daily's looking great. Let's zoom out to the weekly. Again, we talked about this the other day. We are still on the bump and run for the weekly. And I said if we wanted things to remain bullish, we needed to close up at the upper bands. And so far, we are on pace to do that. You know, this is a very typical bump and run. You had very bullish buying on the drop last week, fairly bullish the week before. I mean, there's just hardly any bearish looking candles aside from this one, which was a little concerning a couple months ago. You know, that was the ETF getting swatted down, I believe, and the GBTC outflows from the original week or two when we started. And then once those started to slow down and inflows started to pick up on other ETFs, price just skyrocketed, and really nothing's changed. You can see we are moving up still with the stochastic weights advanced moving down. Again, we looked closer at charts, and this is something I'd like to see. The thing that's kind of getting a little bit worrisome is that the RSI is extremely high right now. We are at around 85 for the RSI and the smooth RSI. I would not, well, I should say, I would expect a lot of volatility in the coming month, 2 months. It's going to be pretty wild, because once you get up this high on RSI, there's a lot of people looking to take profit. Now, whether or not they should, we'll see, but that's something you need to look for. A lot of volatility as price can still climb, even though we're overbought. Price can still climb. Let's look at weekly RSIs from previous cycles. Peaked out at 95 here, but even though the trend started moving down, it set all-time highs in prices as it was moving down. So just because the RSI is very high doesn't mean that price cannot continue higher. You really kind of need to look for those divergences, and I kind of called some of those out last time. We were near the highs back here. I called those out. Very, very overextended at that time. It was a good time, I believe, to have DCA'd out. Kind of the plan here with this one, but I'm not really satisfied with just barely breaking the all-time highs. So we'll see. Maybe just a little bit here and there, but you know, again, we did all of our buying from 22,000 and below, right at that weekly 200. We bought every time it was below the weekly 200, every time we possibly could. It's amazing. We got excellent prices, excellent entries. Uh, Absolutely incredible. Very happy with that. All right. We zoomed out to the weekly. We don't need to talk about the monthly a lot because we've covered it already on some previous streams, but something to note, another reason why we can expect a lot of volatility, we're trading our entire candle this month above the Bollinger Band. So wherever this extends to next week, it'll probably be around the close where we're at right now or wherever we finish up at. So if we close at 71K, the price is going to start already above the upper Bollinger Band like it did this particular month. And again, you can just expect a lot of volatility when you're trading above those standard deviations like that. It's just kind of common sense. Within those candles, and going back to 2020 is something I wanted to kind of highlight again. We were above those monthly bands quite a bit, and price continued to rise up to all-time highs. But you'll notice on the monthly, we still had these huge wicks on the top that looked fairly bearish. You wouldn't think this would be a good sign, seeing huge wicks on the monthly candles, but it's just because we're trading so far above those standard deviations that people, very smart people, look at that and they say, okay, this is pretty ridiculous. Let's take some profit or let's take some risk and short this because look how far it is away from the standard deviation. Even if it does continue up in price for a short time, we are going to be able to place a short and make a bunch of money betting against it, even if we don't necessarily believe it'll stay that way for a long. So just something to keep in mind. I do believe firmly in high volatility. And if you compare the monthly chart, I would say we would be somewhere like this candle in the prior cycle. So you got about, if it were the same, you got about another 50% up, which would be like 130 grand, something like that. I would take that all day. That's very nice. But again, expect volatility, in my opinion, well above the monthly Bollinger Band. Let's zoom back into the 1 minute and see how we're doing here. Get a nice little bounce back up on here. You can see this trend, this ribbon is starting to form on the 1 hour. I imagine with these moving averages, once we get a nice little ribbon formed, I think then we might be able to expect price to kind of take off just a little bit, possibly. But it's forming a nice trend here. As long as we don't get a big dump that kind of resets all of the moving averages, I think it's looking pretty good. Again, we've already looked at these values before. 5 minute has a nice ribbon already. Look at the 15. 15 could potentially start a ribbon. But again, what I am kind of concerned about is forming a sideways range here if we don't have a strong finish today and really point towards those upper bands. Kind of what I'm fearing is we go sideways for a little bit, but eventually I think everything's fine. And one thing to notice. Hello. I have no idea what just happened. I just dropped a ton of frames. Wow. That's unfortunate. I forget what the heck I'm talking about. But we haven't even set that ribbon up here on the weekly. I apologize for the stream issues there, but it looks like everything's back to normal now. Man, that was odd. I don't know what happened. But yeah, that's our TA. Let's take a look at some other things. Take a look at the weekly. Ethereum, there's some news I'm going to go over in a little bit, but I like to look at charts first. Again, similar action to Bitcoin, strong buying on the weekly candles. Stochastic weights advanced, kind of moving down. I would imagine we definitely retest the all-time highs on Ethereum before some of these runs are over with. It would be odd, in my opinion, to get so high and not at least test those all-time highs since we have on Bitcoin. And what you're looking at right here on the weekly is this resistance going all the way back to here. Shot you down, but enough retests it'll break that. There's some interesting news with Ethereum we're going to get to later. Let's look at ETH BTC. This one's kind of ugly. Definitely looking good for Bitcoin on this chart. So this is from the Ethereum perspective. It looks awful versus Bitcoin. And I think this is definitely potentially setting up a huge bounce in the near future. And we'll go over that later with the news. But I do believe we can kind of see a flush forming downward here. Once we break below this line where you've had previous support, it's been hit over and over. I don't think it's going to hold personally. I, in my opinion, kind of see a flush down, and you're going to hit some huge cascading liquidation. People are going to look at their positions in ETH versus BTC for those who do that, and they're going to say, okay, that was a pretty big support. We need to pull, and let's buy lower. Wherever this is going to stop at, let's buy lower. And one of the things I'm looking at is this downward sloping bottom band. So we go back and we look at Bitcoin. You got upward sloping bands forming your trend. You got downward sloping bands forming your trend. And a big difference between this touch towards the bottom and the previous two is that the bands were contracting on those bounces. It would come down, it would bounce up. So you're gonna want another huge bounce. Otherwise, I think it's gonna flush, and it's gonna look kind of ugly. It's not gonna be great. All right, let's take a look at Litecoin now, which I think is doing really solid. Surprisingly, Litecoin, I think this was around its halving last year, made a high of about 114, 15, something like that. That was a nice one. But it got rejected from its 200 MA. It broke, I guess, on the hype of its halving, and it just couldn't hold it. But right now, we've got a nice solid trend forming, bands moving up. I think if you're patient and Litecoin does manage to break the 200 again, it's going to do pretty good. But one thing to keep an eye on is that 200. Going back 4 years ago, there's a lot of price action above the current price. So this is going to stay relatively flat, even if price continues to go up now, just because it's got to overcome those huge price gains in the past. So I would be completely fine selling my Litecoin, what little bit I have left, around 200 this cycle even, potentially. But it's something you obviously got to keep an eye on. Let's take a look at this trend downward here, though. Go from wick to wick. That one ended there. That's nice. So you're kind of already out of that trend. So from here to here, you're out of this one as well. Go from here to here, you're out of that one as well. Trying to see if there's any more trends, diagonal trends you need to really look for. I think this one is, yes, this is kind of your last diagonal trend, in my opinion. Quick, kind of a wick. And it also aligns with the 200 MA. Funny enough, you got those confluences again. Something you need to keep an eye on is when those indicators come together like that. Take a look at Link on the weekly. This is beautiful. Beautiful. Broke out of that 200. Reclaimed it, it's going up, retested the mid band, it's going up, upper band sloping up, ribbon trying to form on the weekly. So it's as if we are early in the cycle. Don't even have a ribbon. I mean, look at the ribbon here, 50 above the 100, 20 above the 50, above the 100, above the 200 back here. That was a great ribbon. You saw the cross under here. That was probably a good signal that things weren't really going to last. Price pumped. It gave you a chance to get out. It's whatever. But the ribbon was very well intact at the cycle top. We aren't near forming a ribbon. So if this is a new cycle, I don't think you're near the top. Take a look at Bitcoin. Again, no ribbon at the cycle top. Ribbon intact. Ribbon intact near the highs. Look at Ethereum. Ribbon intact at the cycle highs. But one thing you'll notice is the ribbon wasn't intact for a very long time before the first highs. So even if we do get the ribbon to form, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to last very long. Take a look back at Bitcoin. I wanted to go back. That was 2020. Let's take a look at 2017. Ribbon very much so intact for a very long time in 2017. That was nice. I don't know if we'll get something like that again. Let's get back to the end of the chart. Back to where you can see it. Take a look at Doge. Not a huge fan, but the chart on the weekly is just crazy. Yeah, so we got an excellent candle right now. You're pushing through some resistance from the past back here. RSS getting a little high, but again, that doesn't mean much. RSI can stay overbought for a very long time, and price can continue to rise. So Doge, pretty good. Not a fan of the fundamentals on it, but definitely a fun play. Take a look at IBIT. These are the BlackRock ETFs. Look at the daily. It kind of looks a little bit like the daily Bitcoin chart on Coinbase in the sense that you got this retest down to the mid band and under, back up above, and you've kind of tested it as support. So if we go back to the Bitcoin chart, you'll see something kind of like that. You go up, come under, back around. And I really think a lot of TA right now on Bitcoin, you're going to get a lot of good data on this chart. It's a lot cleaner because you have that weekend data. There's more information to look at. There's way more stuff to look at on this chart than there is on like a BlackRock ETF. And again, what we're looking at here is a retest on the mid band. Want to see a solid close today. It doesn't have to be a breakout day, but a solid close today, I think, leads to one near the tops, and a strong finish to the week and to the month as well, if that occurs. Now, I do want to take a look at some of the important things that have happened since the last live stream. The last live stream was Monday. My son has been in the hospital. He got some sort of odd infection in his foot. Leave it to kids to do that, but I am back today. He is back at school, and everything's good. So here's the last live stream. Here we are right afterwards. I want to take you through all the important stuff I've retweeted. If you don't follow me on X, please do, because you will get to see the important things that I retweet that I think give you a lot of insight into the market, and are a lot of things that I consider on a more fundamental level for the future and whether or not I want to be in crypto at all. And for now, I do. Looking very good. All right, London Stock Exchange, March 25th, to launch a market for Bitcoin exchange traded notes on May 28th. Very good, very bullish activity happening there with Bitcoin. Coinbase Global Inc. aware that some users may be experiencing delayed SINs for assets on Base. So Base is essentially their Ethereum layer 2, where they do a lot of their Ethereum-based transactions, so they don't have to pay huge fees. And the fact that it's getting overwhelmed is a little concerning. A lot of people are starting to speculate on Base, on like new meme coins on Base, similar to how people speculate on Solana for meme. A lot of activity going on Base because Base hasn't had its meme season or something like that. Like, this stuff makes no sense. It's all just hunches and influencers trying to make you want to do something. These are stupid reasons, in my opinion, to get into any position is to follow an influencer. I mean, I don't consider myself an influencer, but I wouldn't just follow me. Just because I like something, just because I like Bitcoin doesn't mean you should like it. You should like Bitcoin because you've looked at the evidence and you've seen that value there. Just like whatever your religion is, you should look at that religion and you should see the value in it and what it's doing for you, and that's why you should believe. You shouldn't just believe in a religion because somebody tells you to. should actually have that belief. All right. We had some nice pumps going on. I wanted to look at the ETF flows because last week they were abysmal. Things on the ETF flow side really looked concerning. We had a lot of GBTC outflow and not a lot of absorption in the other ETFs. So what was happening was GBTC was producing a ton of outflows, but those were being absorbed and there were even more inflows on the other ETFs. And what started happening last week was those huge outflows from GBTC weren't getting met with inflows from the other ones. So what we were seeing before was probably changing of ownership from the outflow ETF to the inflow ETF. Whereas now it seemed like last week was just selling because there wasn't matching buys in the markets of similar magnitude. I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a moment. I guarantee you I've retweeted plenty of that. I also shared about that indicator I was telling you about earlier, the fancy triple moving averages. By far my favorite indicator I've ever created. Very simple to use, easy to understand with tons of customization. Please look at getting this indicator on your chart. If you use a moving average, this allows you to have 3 on there. You can hide 2 of them if you only want 1. Definitely my favorite indicator that I use every single time I look at the chart. All right, after the success of the US spot Bitcoin ETFs, the London Stock Exchange are offering those. This was just another hit on that same news piece. And something very important, TradingView is having their Easter sale, 70% off. This is pretty much the biggest sale you can get on their plans. I went ahead and re-upped since it was on sale. I had kind of put it off because I haven't been doing the live streams as much as I used to. But now that I'm back to it, I went ahead and re-upped with the sale. It was $228 for a year on the premium plan. Pretty solid deal. It's usually what I get. If you're wanting to sign up, use the affiliate code there. I never post those. I never really push those, but if you're going to, might as well. All right, Bitcoin surpasses 70K. Coinbase's reserves are at their lowest in 9 years. Now, this I think is huge. It's not getting any attention for the most part. I mean, when this was posted, several people looked at it, but the orange line here, not that you can see most of the chart, but my head is still kind of in the way. What we see is a dip in the amount on the exchange in 2020 as Bitcoin was being bought up. And even throughout the bear market, the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, specifically Coinbase, continued to reduce. Price is going up, and there's less available on the exchange, which is kind of odd. This did happen at the last cycle, but as you noticed during the bear market, more and more people put their Bitcoin on the exchange. This one's much different in the sense that people, even during the bear market, took their Bitcoin off. What were they doing? Why are we continuing to go down? If you look back at this, it hasn't been this low since the price was $200. How does that happen? A lot of it are these big entities with their institutional custodians. They don't need their Bitcoin on the Coinbase exchange itself. So that's one reason why it's doing that, in my opinion. But it's interesting to watch the trend, whereas in the past, this price increased dramatically, the amount people put on the exchanges increased dramatically. Even going back to this cycle, they started to increase, and then they just stopped. That was interesting. And I think that's one of the reasons why people didn't believe that we were going to top in 2021 was because the exchanges went down so low. And it was very interesting to continue to see this throughout the bear market and even now. Very odd. And with the continued buying from the ETFs, I guess you can only expect that to go down because they have to buy, I believe, from the OTC desk. A lot of OTC people have to get them from the market. They sell up for a premium. It's interesting, very much. A huge number from Fidelity on the 25th. I think that was their record, 261.8 million. I was thinking, if Fidelity got 261 million, surely BlackRock will have a huge number, but only 35.5 for BlackRock. It's been an interesting week for the ETF flows. I will say that. You've got the U.S. government indicting KuCoin. I don't know what's going to come of that. I'm not really too concerned. KuCoin, not really that important. GBTC outflows 212 million. They're kind of slowing down, but they're still very significant. We had a nice net inflow of 418 million on the 26th. This is something that I thought was very interesting. I think you should read. And this was a post about why did BlackRock get behind Bitcoin in the first place. Essentially, it boils down to this. Larry Fink basically said that Gen Z and millennials don't trust the financial system. Got it. That's absolutely correct. And they aren't saving for retirement. It's not necessarily by choice. We're told to save for retirement, but with inflation, salaries, all of these things being very low, housing costs incredibly high, completely unreasonable for a new entrant into the market to be able to find a home to buy right now. Yeah, there isn't a lot of hope for the youth right now, and I feel for them. I mean, I've got kids who are growing up and are going to be adults here within the next decade. It's concerning. We got to do as much as we can for them. Hopefully, everything works out well, but they are more inclined digitally, and essentially BlackRock thinks that you can onboard this younger generation into the traditional system through more digital friendly products. And I think that kind of goes back to where Larry Fink has mentioned that there's going to be a lot going on with tokenization. He basically sees everything being tokenized now. It's so wild to believe that someone in that position would say that, but essentially everything would be tokenized. It's this is something you need to understand when you're talking about fundamental analysis of the sector. This is key. This is important. These are one of those things that I repost that I don't really say a lot about. When I repost them, I don't even quote it. I repost things that I think you should read, because if I find them important, I want other people to buy things. Especially if you follow me on the channel, it's understanding what's going on behind the scenes is very important. All right, we've already talked about this. So talking about GBTC outflows. This is a chart specifically focused on GBTC. Nothing but outflows on it. And I did add a little context to this one. We really should throw a party when you see inflows on this, because that's going to be a crucial day in the history of the Bitcoin ETFs, because it's really been what's holding us back, is all of that selling. And it's not like a lot of it hasn't been being absorbed. The selling of GBTC has been absorbed quite substantially in other products, but if you go and look at last week, it wasn't being absorbed, and that's why we had net outflows every single day. You had huge outflows on GBTC, but a lot of people weren't absorbing those. They weren't changing their GBTC to something else. There was actually selling last week, and that's a lot of the difference that you saw. All right, something else very important. $4.5 trillion asset manager Fidelity filed for their S1 form for spot Ethereum ETF with staking included. We do not know if these Ethereum ETFs are going to be approved like we had the confidence we did with Bitcoin, but big institutions like Fidelity and BlackRock filing is a very good sign. I could see these getting denied the very first round, similar to how Bitcoin was. Essentially, SEC and Gary Gensler is so much against crypto for whatever reason really the only reason the Bitcoin one made it through was because of lawsuits against other applications. Like, it's just not fair. Why would you allow futures but not spot? I could see them denying the Ethereum one the very first time and then having to face a lawsuit. And then potentially you might not get an Ethereum ETF this cycle. You might have to wait until the next one because they're going to have to go through court. So it's just something to keep an eye on. But this does seem very likely to occur at some point. And I'll expand on that in just a moment because there is another retweet about this coming up in just a minute. All right, something else that I have found very interesting, Mr. 100. If you don't know Mr. 100, this is somebody, or should I say an address. It may not be some person, it may be some entity, some government, state, some sort of nation, but they've been buying 100 Bitcoin at a time, many, many times over, and they are now the 13th largest Bitcoin holder in the world with 55,733 Bitcoin. CryptoLark, you don't need the dollar symbol here. You need the Bitcoin emoji. That would have worked well, but I don't know what he was thinking here. Simple mistake. But 55,733 Bitcoin, one of the largest holders in the world. Their identity has not been found out yet. We don't know who this is. So this is something to keep an eye on. When we find out who this is, it could either be very good or very concerning. Who has this much Bitcoin? We know Michael Saylor. It's a pretty safe bet for him to buy and hold a bunch of Bitcoin because we know how incredibly bullish he is with Bitcoin, trying to do like a speculative attack against the dollar with Bitcoin. But who's buying this much Bitcoin? Do they intend to hold this much Bitcoin, or are they just trying to trade it? But essentially, once you get a holder this large, you're going to start getting these whale alerts. You're going to be seeing when they move the Bitcoin if you're following Twitter or the chain. You know, you can see when they move these. So once they start moving these to an exchange, then you'll be concerned. They're holding them here, and you know, maybe this is Coinbase custody. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows right now. But this is something to watch. This is one of those risks in the market. I don't think it's a fundamental game changer or anything, unless it is a huge government nation. If this is Russia, America, China, India, you know, some sort of heavily populated country, yeah, that would be game changing. But we would want to know their strategy, further clarify that. But just any sort of government, huge government like that buying in would be absolutely game changing and something worth watching. So this is a risk. This could be good. This could be bad. There's a lot of variability, so it could be very good. It could be very bad, and it could very well not matter at all. But just something to keep an eye on. As long as they're holding the coins, it's good. All right, abnormally large inflow for ARK. I don't know what happened with ARK. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, this was yesterday. 200 million in inflows on ARK. By far a record day. I don't know what's going on with it. This is Kathy Wood's product. You can go back to March 11th. Nothing even close to that. They had 93 million, which was solid. But this was double that. And it was very important because we had a huge inflow of 243 million on the day. So it was a crucial part of offsetting the outflows from GBTC. And I like to share the GBTC outflows. We're still holding on to very high levels on their outflows. They can't keep it up forever, that's for sure, but they do have a lot left to sell. And what we're wanting to see are days like yesterday and the day before where their outflows, 212, 299 million, where these are offset with purchases in other ETFs. We want to see the GBTC money where they're leaving GBTC but going to products with cheaper fees. What we don't want to see is what we saw last week, where GBTC sells and they're not really moving that money into other ETFs. These aren't people really, trying to stay in Bitcoin. These are people leaving it. Now, there's been a lot of speculation and rumor about, was this forced selling since they didn't buy elsewhere? It very well could have been. This could have been some sort of forced liquidation event where they had to sell somebody's holdings or some entity's holdings and didn't buy for whatever. But just something to keep an eye on. This is why, for now, the flows are very, very important until the GBTC outflows are resolved. I want to I'm not sure if you could have seen that, but as these ETF flows dwindle on GBTC, I think for several weeks, it'll be very important to watch what levels the flows of other Bitcoin ETFs are. Now, if we can expect days like this regularly when there's just about zero GBTC, that's completely fine. And there's quite a few. There's probably like 100 million here, but it was completely offset here. So if none of this money went into these and this was zero, we would have made 110 million. Would have been really good. Nice solid flows. I think anybody would have said, yes, sign me up to buy Bitcoin here in the bear market, knowing that an ETF is coming and we'll have $100 million in flow every day. That would have been gigantic news. But it is something we need to watch. We're watching the daily flows now just to make sure that the GBTC flows are being bought elsewhere. And then once these dry up, what are the buying levels going to look like after we see people no longer transferring from GBTC to other products? That'll give us an idea of actual demand, I believe. And then when we get to the cycle top, once we start hitting all-time highs and we're pushing way up there, we need to pay attention to when they start selling. That is something very important. And again, when they start selling, are they going to be offset somewhere else? Are they going to be moving from one to another? And something that I am particularly interested in are these promotional fees that they have. Some of these, I can't remember which ones have which, but they have 0% fees for the first year, for the first 6 months. Well, what happens when their fees increase to a level similar to GBTC? Are they going to start selling and taking profit? Or are they going to start selling like GBTC does and moving into one with lower fees? And then there's so much to consider because, you have capital gains. You have to worry about, if they sell at the cycle top, how much realistically are they going to move into another product if they've got to take the capital gains tax hit on that? So those will be a huge trend in the future to look for with the ETF flows. And where do we go when we hit this cycle top? What happens to the ETFs when the cycle finally tops? Very interesting. Again, you really should be paying attention to this information, I think. Something finally kind of good for Ethereum, million validators. That's a pretty cool achievement for Ethereum. Again, I am Bitcoin first, but I see the value in other chains, and 1 million validators is pretty cool. That's awesome for Ethereum. It's a good sign that even if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're still going to be able to make money with other chains because people are greedy. Look at meme coins. That's all you got to do. There's so much money to be made off of other people's greed. Do we really need Ethereum when we have Bitcoin as a settlement layer, and you can build layer 2s for Bitcoin that can do all the things that Ethereum can do? No, not really. You don't need Ethereum to do the things that it does with Bitcoin. And that's been proven many times over. But you have greed in the market. People want to create their own coins. They want to overtake Ethereum. They want to overtake Bitcoin. They want their product. They want to make all the money on it. So Ethereum, solid product, no problem with it. But if there was only one winner, it would be Bitcoin, in my opinion. But Ethereum makes a solid case, and a million validators is just another reason that Ethereum is a very solid case. Again, if you all want to see all this information, just follow me on X. I post all this stuff. It's BigBits.io. Between the live streams, I will post this important information, and I will continue to try and cover it on the live streams. I think this has been very good for the channel and for those viewers who have been here to keep up to date with this. And if you all have any questions, just leave them in the chat. I will try to follow up on that stuff. But honestly, I'm not too concerned about much else going on with the news around crypto. There's that KuCoin lawsuit. Not worried about it. The one thing that I didn't retweet that I probably should have, though, was that Coinbase, the SEC allowed Coinbase to go through the trial. The courts allowed the SEC to sue Coinbase. I think they cut a couple of charges that they were looking for off of it. But, excuse me. But I don't think that's going to be a huge deal. I think Coinbase is going to win. They've won like every lawsuit. Essentially, all that did, that was just the court saying that, okay, the SEC has a good enough argument that it can be presented. And honestly, I thought it was pretty bullish because they essentially said the SEC doesn't even have a leg to stand on two of their arguments that they had. And even if the SEC does get something out of this, it's probably just going to be fines. The SEC understands that Coinbase is running the entire Bitcoin ETF system and soon to be the entire Ethereum ETF system. There's no need to shut down Coinbase. It's not going to get to that point. It might take a hit to Coinbase stock. They might have to pay a bunch in fines, delist some things. Worst case scenario, they're not going to shut down Coinbase. Again, the stock could get very well hurt, but I don't see a scenario in which they shut down Coinbase over this lawsuit that they got. The SEC has not been winning. They have made a few points, and I think a lot of the crypto out there is actually a security. The way that people created it and the way that they run it, it is a security, and they try to claim it's not. But there's a lot of stuff that isn't. I think one good point that they make on Ethereum potentially being a security is they introduce staking. So now you've got a team of developers and you've got a leader responsible for developing a product that guarantees yield. So that was interesting, and I think that's going to play an important part in the Ethereum ETF conversations with their staking model that they have. Fidelity wants to include staking. I think most of them are trying to include staking now into their Ethereum product. So something to keep an eye on with that lawsuit is how it could impact those as well. I'm trying to think what else we can even get into the news. I've been going on here for nearly an hour. Yeah, we've been streaming for nearly an hour. It's been a heck of a day, and again, please drop any questions you all might have in the chat. I would love to try and help you all out with whatever you need. Oh, hey, this is cool. SBF is going to be sentenced today. His attorneys are requesting no more than 6.5 years in prison, while prosecutors recommend 40 to 50. That's a pretty big difference. I mean, billions of dollars, tons of scams. I mean, I think a lot of people know that probably deserve it. But I wonder if there's any updates on that. Okay, so it's not looking good for SBF at the start of his sentence hearing. Judge Kaplan said a thief who takes his loot to Las Vegas and successfully bets the stolen money is not entitled to a discount on the sentence by using his Las Vegas winnings to pay back what he stole. Yeah, that's not a very good analogy for SBF there from the judge himself. That's kind of concerning. Case is up to 100 plus years. So even though this article says the prosecutors are looking at, the prosecutors only recommend 40 to 50, but the judge could decide up to 100 plus. And it is pretty interesting that it seems like he used his parents to try and skirt around the rules and to break the rules, in fact. So it's interesting that his parents aren't more included in the sentencing, like, or just the court process at all. Why isn't there more that we have to unravel from this to figure out what happened with it? Of course, I get a phone call. Spam calls, wonderful. All right, let's see. Nothing really too interesting going on this morning other than waiting for the SBF stuff here. Look at some of the other news that's going on. Something here that I found kind of interesting just now. Over $1 billion in U.S. Treasury notes have been tokenized on public blockchain. We talked about earlier Larry Fink and tokenization of assets, and an example of that is this is tokenization of assets, and it looks like a trend that's going to pick up and continue to pick up. Very interesting stuff to follow here. Nothing really big just yet this morning. It's like Bitcoin's starting to bounce back up again. Let's look at the minute chart. It's always the funnest. What did I say? We needed to get a ribbon going before the trend would really get moving and potentially break out big. We kind of got that ribbon forming. If I were to predict a breakout, it would happen here in the next hour to 3 hours. Let's see where we're at on the 4-hour candle with time. Yeah, I would expect it to be then, but again, look at the upper bands on the 4-hour. I'm not sure we really break out the way the way we'd all kind of hope. I'm not really sure we actually do that. We shall see. Surely there's got to be some other stuff. I want to keep the live stream going. Fun. Yeah, I don't really care to get into geopolitical stuff. Oh, here's something kind of interesting. Breaking: Judge finds that Sam Bankman-Fried attempted witness tampering and gave a perjured testimony at trial. Whew. He's in deep, man. It's bad for him. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for the stream, guys. Thank you all for stopping by. Please make sure you like and subscribe. That kind of stuff all helps. But very good stream today. Lots of great information to go over. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. See you later.